and welcome to What's Possible, Conversations with World-Class Coaches. Today, I have a super special guest, one of my favorite humans. You know, when you meet those people and there's something just awesome about the energy they put in the world, that's who we have today. Today, I'm joined by David Pillay, who is the author of The Law of the Garbage Truck, as well as another book that he will share. I wasn't able to pull it off my shelf quickly enough. So David has that. So he will share the next book. David is an SVC coach, as well as a world-renowned speaker, best-selling author, and good human, which is the most important fact. So David, I'm going to turn it over to just say hello, welcome, and please show the 3 wishes to our audience.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. It's so great to be here. It's always a pleasure to be with Eileen. And in the 3 promises is right here. It's the second book follows The Law of the Garbage Truck, but they both are meant to go together. It's kind of like part 1 and part 2, which we talked about. Oh, there we go. Part 1 and part 2. There we go.
And I always call it the 3 wishes. And I realize it's because it has the thing that you blow when we were kids, we would blow and then you'd make your wish, but it's the 3 promises.
3 promises, but 3 wishes works too. So no, I know exactly when we used to blow that, and then your wishes would go and you watch and fly the right visual.
Exactly. And you'd think, please come true. So, David, before we launch in, we're going to be talking about what's possible when you learn how to manage negativity, which is David's strong suit. You can't even imagine a negative vibe coming off of David. But with that said, he is I'm going to say the expert, the person who, when people go to and they're dealing with, whether it's difficult people, whether it's negative energy, he is a go-to person for how do I manage this? Probably in myself, but then also in the world around me when I'm dealing with people who have negativity. And I really want to figure out how to best work with them and maybe even, if possible, turn that negative energy around. And so that's going to be our topic today. That's my teaser. Before we do that, David, there's one story that I would love you to share with the friends who have joined. And that is the ritual that you started during COVID with your family. You shared it on a coach call one day, and it has never left my mind. It's just such a beautiful story and really shares who you and your family are as people.
It's a wonderful introduction to a little something that we do as a family. In COVID, we were all so close together. We, I was actually thinking about this the other day. COVID was bad news all around, although there are hidden gifts in most difficult situations, not all for sure, but in many of the ones that we faced. And so one of them was we really had quality time with the family. And so one of the things that we just started, and I don't know exactly who started it in the family, but we started this thing where when someone would leave, we'd all go out to the car and then give everybody a hug and a kiss. And then whoever's driving, when they would drive away, we would all wave to them until they couldn't see us anymore. And they'd wave, put their arm out the window and wave until they couldn't see us. And then they'd come back and they'd come back in the house, and then the next person would leave. And we were always doing that. So the funny thing is that the neighbors would be across the street and they'd go, "Hey, how you doing?" And so they're waving at each other. And we've continued to do that. It's a fun way to kind of catch up on the way out too, and where you're going, what you're doing, how you're feeling, and so forth, and a chance to express your love on the way out. So it's pretty funny, but it's really meaningful for us. It's like someone goes, "I'm leaving," and then we all start coming from different parts of the house to go out and greet the family, or wish them well.
That story, and I've heard it before. That's why I asked you to share, but it gives me chills every time. And I just think about what kind of world we'd live in if we all were sent on our way with family, friends, the people in our world coming out, giving us a hug and kiss goodbye and waving goodbye. It would put talk about kind of the opposite of negative energy. It would put so much love and good vibes out there. Just a beautiful.
I appreciate that. When you talk about it that way, that's how we think about it. And that when you leave the house, you leave in good spirits, because you're going somewhere and you're going to interact with people, usually, friends or or work or school or whatever the case might be. And so why not start with in a good place? Then also when people leave, sometimes it's like, oh, did so-and-so leave? Yeah, they left. Oh, I didn't even know. Well, so it leaves everyone who's home feeling good too. And so boost of positive energy, which, is quite nice. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And it's so contagious. I mean, it's the ripple effect of what your one family is doing for this one person. It ripples right back to all of you, but then that person then goes into the world, has that energy that they put out there, and then it just continues to multiply. It's lovely.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk. We just talked about good vibes. Let's talk about negativity and just negative energy. Before we jump in, I always like to kind of set the tone with a definition. Obviously, we all know what negativity means and negative energy means. At the same time, I think it's good to have kind of more of a little bit of a definition for the context of our conversation. So if you can share what you mean by that.
Yeah, negativity, I think one word I'll introduce right away is excessive negativity, in the sense that we all have moments where we complain, or we have a little resentment or a little jealousy, or we gossip a little bit. These are part of being human. We have moments where these things happen. Some of us are more elevated than others. I don't put myself here. I put myself in more the every man, every woman person. But excessive negativity is not good. Excessive resentment, excessive complaining, excessive regret, excessive worry. All those things they're not good for you health-wise. They're not good for you psychologically. They're not good for your relationships. They don't help you in your career. Excessive is the issue. I'm not one who carries a banner to stamp out negativity. A little bit is normal. But negativity is really anything that is to an excess is going to distract you from what's important in your life. It's important in your work. It's going to put you in an area which I call the garbage zone. And that's what I refer to a lot of negativity. Emotional negativity is a form of garbage, emotional garbage, which falls into the law of the garbage truck teachings. But I refer to that excessive, talking behind people's back, not giving credit, and all these various things. If it's excessive, again, it falls in what I call a garbage zone, and it's a garbage zone of energy, and you're invited to it all the time. And so people are always engaging in gossip or complaining and about this or that and so forth. So what you end up doing is getting in a cycle. So the negativity that I'm referring to now is the opposite of positive ripple effect. You get the negative ripple effect, or secondhand smoke. You get secondhand attitude, secondhand excessive negativity, and so forth. So that's I'll just quickly throw in there's the gratitude cycle, which is really the positive emotion cycle, where it's hope and curiosity and strengths of people and gratitude. And when you're in that cycle, you are more creative and open-minded, interested, enthusiastic, you're more likely to be hired, and so forth. So I'm talking about, again, negativity that really gets in the way of relationships, in particular, in all forms of life. So it's pretty, toxic negativity is another, gratuitous negativity is another. To be negative is also really, it gets in the way of everything. Yeah.
I love that you highlight that excessive piece, because it normalizes that as humans, everything's not going to always be great. And I know there's been a lot out there about toxic positivity. So it's not that we're trying to go in a direction of toxic positivity. Anything to the extreme, not great. And so what you're talking about is that other end of the spectrum of the excessive negativity. So it's embracing what's healthy and normal regarding that sea of negativity, and yet having that check and balance of, ooh, am I spiraling in this and sinking in negativity?
That's right, exactly. And you mentioned toxic positivity, which is, it's funny because people will say that guy is just not positive enough. He's really a negative guy, really. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, you are the positive folks that are now getting really negative on somebody because they're not positive enough. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful. And so there's so many things to talk about as we get started here. It's just like things are popping.
Well, it's a dance between those worlds of being able to show up. Well, and I think one thing, and you and I have talked about this before, is being able to show up authentically positive when you feel that you're in that space and it's really, this is where your mind, body, and soul is, or when you do have a bad day or you don't agree with something or something's kind of being able to authentically be in that space too, but at the same time, not only reside in either one space.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Authenticity is such a great point that, and I encountered this so much in executive coaching, at Silicon Valley coaching or, wherever I am, is the idea that that authenticity often is, I'm the real deal. Someone will say, I'm the real deal. I tell it like it is. I'm a truth teller. I'm transparent. And so when something happens to me, I react. And that initial reaction is the authentic one. And so people need to understand that and live with that and so forth. And I'll say, that's great. That's one level of authenticity. But here's another one. Like the idea of Viktor Frankl, who talks about the space between response and reaction, is that you can quickly look at the situation and say, my first reaction is to yell at this person because of what happened. But in my overall goals and the perspective that I have in my life and the person I want to be and the way I want to influence the people on my team and so forth, yelling is not the appropriate response. What would be more appropriate is to ask a question, take a beat and ask a question, and gather information. And so authenticity right there can often be misinterpreted as a free pass to just say what's on your mind. And often it's regrettable what we first say. But that doesn't mean you're not at times right with that first emotion. But the idea is to get faster and faster because of practice to see what's the negative stuff you can't control, what's the negative stuff that you need to deal with. How do you want to deal with it? Is it more positivity or more addressing the issue as it comes? But taking a beat is one of my clients uses as a guide to just take that quick note before you start going. Another one is that the idea of thinking of negativity and positivity as bouncing balls. And you're at let's say you run a team and you're at a big board table, and these bouncing balls are coming from different people. They're like invitations: invitation to go negative, invitation to go positive, invitation to go negative. Which ball are you going to pick up? Which one are you going to hold in your hand? Which one are you going to, which one are you going to pass? And are you going to pass the negative ball off to somebody, or hold on to that one and say, let's have a little more thought and creativity around an issue. And so I'm going to pass like improv comedy. You always want to set up the next person for success. So delivering the positive ball, or a negative ball is okay if it's thoughtful and it's not excessive. So yeah, a couple thoughts there.
So many good things. And one thing that I love with that example is it puts you back in control. What do
Yes.
I want to choose to pick up? Because I can't always choose what's coming my way, to Viktor Frankl's point. I can't always choose what's coming my way, but I can choose which ball I pick up. And one thing that I always think about, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, particularly when I'm coaching somebody that's going into maybe a tough meeting or a tough conversation, I always say, let's start with the end. What do you want that person to think, feel, do as a result of your conversation? And what's going to get you there?
Perfect. It's interesting. Like right now, I'm focusing a lot and working with a lot of people around what happens when the worst of things happen in your life is the law of the garbage truck, which essentially is what you said, Eileen, so eloquently, is that the law of the garbage truck is around your energy for the things you can control, the negative things you can control, and the negative things you can influence, and letting the negative things that you can't control in any way, no influence, like a car that cuts you off and then heads off in the sunset, you don't see him again. That's the negativity that you want to let pass by. You don't want to process it and add a lot of stuff to it and say, there's probably, they're all bad drivers in Florida where I live, or they're older people, or they're this or that. And then make it all full of negativity, as opposed to just letting that pass by, so you can focus on the real issues that are important. So that's another distinction that I think, as you alluded to, which is really quite powerful.
Well, and it even makes me think of, before we got on this, we had scheduled for a certain time, and then David's computer decided that was the time it wanted to reboot. And so It's one of those things where you could have gotten into a funk, frustrated about your computer. You come to this in all frazzled. I could have gotten to a point of, oh my gosh, I have another meeting happening right after, and now I'm frazzled. And both of us were like, it happens. We'll figure this out. And it's really not a big deal. And you had fun with it. You're like, okay, drinks on me, or, whatever. And just, I hope you guys are having a fun conversation without me. Be there soon. And I think that's such an example of how to deal with a situation that could put you in a mood, which then of course spirals into other areas of your life. Or you could say,
yes,
whatever. I mean, obviously that wasn't a huge, there are big things that are negative that can happen in our life, but we can also take something small and create it into something big.
It's definitely it's a real example, because I was sitting there as I have excuses and reasons for why this happened and so forth, and but they're all forms of, to a degree, if I don't own up to the fact that I was late and potentially could have caused a real hassle in schedules, then I'm not owning up to my responsibility. And then that creates a level of garbage, because I'm not taking, I'm excusing myself. And so part of what, I recommend is to apologize in some way and say, well, I'm sorry, I'm late. I hope, this is, and then you have the grace that Eileen showed, was say, take a breath. It's okay. We're good. Get on when you can. And so then that helps put me at ease, so that then again, the positive energy opens up again. As you said, it can really close down. And those moments in time, sometimes they're even smaller than that. But they can have an impact on the rest of the day. People having trouble with traffic first thing in the morning, or they're a little late for a meeting and they internalize it negatively, and the team gives them a hard time, or whatever the case might be. Let's just say it's just happens. It's not like a recurring problem. That can set the tone for the meeting and that person for the day. So yeah, it's a great example. Yeah,
I would love for you to share, just because we've brought up the garbage truck. And I know you've said it so many times, you've done so many huge presentations on the essence of the law of the garbage truck. But do you mind just laying out the scenario that kind of prompted this whole direction? Because I think that that situation gives a really clear vision of what you're talking about and how you can handle something in a way that just totally changes the course.
Oh, happy to. I have told the story quite a bit over the years. but it's still so fresh in my mind that and Eileen and I both believe in the power of story. So whenever I speak, I share the story. But basically, I lived in New York City for years, and this was in my mid 20s. I was in a hurry to catch a train at Grand Central Station, so I went down from my apartment to the street. Did what you do in New York: put your arm up, raise, for a taxi. It's pre-Uber, so everything is in Lyft, so everything is taxis. The yellow taxi cab pulls up in front. I jump in, say, let's head to Grand Central Station. We take off and we start driving. Now in New York, there are no there are plenty of stop signs, but there's no speed limit. There are no speed limits. So the car goes as fast as there's room to go. And so my guy was moving along pretty well. But we're driving in the right-hand lane when all of a sudden a black car jumps out of a parking space right in front of us. I mean, literally, this comes right out. And at that time, we weren't moving that fast. But the car came out so fast that my taxi driver slammed on his brakes, tires squeal. We skid and missed the other cars back in by just like an inch. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is, we almost got in a major accident on the way to the Grand Central Station. But then what happened next is what really surprised me. Well, first of all, the driver in the other car, the guy who almost caused a major accident, he whips his head around and he does that face that looks like he's saying something very friendly, like, putting a hand out. And then he raises his finger like, I think he was saying that we're number one. So I think, gosh, how can he be complaining about us when he just almost caused a major accident? But then what really blew me away was the taxi driver was just, he's friendly. And he just waved it off and rolled down the window and just said, hey, it's all right, to have a good day, takes off. And he still has a smile on his face. And I'm in the back seat and I go, why'd you just do that? This guy just almost caused a major accident. He could have sent us to the hospital. I mean, we could have been, really hurt. And he said something that I've never forgotten. It was about garbage trucks and something that I eventually wrote into something called the Law of the Garbage Truck many years later. And that is that he said something to the effect of, many people are like garbage trucks. They run around full of garbage, full of frustration, full of anger, and full of disappointment. And when they fill up, they do what garbage trucks do. They look for a place to dump it. And when you let them, they'll dump it on you. So when you see a garbage truck, don't make it a personal thing. Just smile, wave, wish them well, and move on. Just move on. So I'm sitting in the back seat of the car and I'm thinking, wow, how often do I let garbage trucks, people with frustration, anger, and disappointment that I have nothing to do with, run right over me and dump their garbage? And how often do I take that garbage and spread it to other people and bring my garbage to their lives? And how often do I do that? And then I said, I don't want their garbage, and I don't want to spread it anymore. So I thought of it at that time. The movie The Sixth Sense had come out, and the little boy said in that movie that famous line, "I see dead people." Yeah. Haley Joel Osment and Bruce Willis, a great movie. He said, "I see dead people." Well, I started to see garbage trucks. I see people coming to dump their garbage, bring their frustration to me. There's nothing that I can do. It's not, I have no control over it other than being able to wish them well, wave, and focus on the positive that I have and that I can control inside of my life and let them pass by so I can focus on the people that I can help, the people that I can influence, and not add excessive negativity to the person that just came through, where they're in and out of my life, but I'm still talking about them or frustrating people with my stories and so forth. So the idea is that human beings are not meant to be garbage trucks. Garbage trucks in life are about going and collecting our refuse, our garbage, and then finding a safe place to dump it, and then to turn around and start that all over again. But human beings aren't meant to dump garbage, first of all, on each other. We're not meant to look for garbage and fill up on it. And then we're not meant to create our own garbage. Because we don't need other people to make us feel bad. We can just choose our thoughts or let thoughts go unescorted in our minds and run rampant with negativity with nobody else's influence but our own. Just waking up in the morning at times is a challenge. So that's the idea of not to think of ourselves as not being a garbage truck. We're not garbage trucks. And when we think that way, we don't carry the burden of everybody's negativity, and we're not inclined to fill up on it so much that we're dropping garbage everywhere we move because the truck is so full of garbage, emotional garbage. So that's essentially the law of the garbage truck.
And obviously I've talked to you about it. I've read your book, and every time you speak about it, it's literally chills up and down my spine. And you couple that with your send off for your family. If we could embrace the send off for the family and this mindset, what kind of world we'd be living in. It's amazing. It made me think of, I have a sibling going through just a work situation. And I said, a conversation that she was going to have. I said, pretend you're Teflon, let it just slide right off. And it's kind of like, be a garbage truck in that, or not, I'm sorry, don't be a garbage truck. Pardon me. The opposite. Right. Don't take it in, let them hold on to this.
Let them, and you wish them well. I mean, that's the idea.
Exactly.
You wish them well. And so being nice and friendly and so forth. But just as you said, is think like Teflon, or sometimes people say, like a duck, that the water slides off a duck. It's that don't take on stuff that's not meant for you to take on. It's not we weren't put on this earth to carry everybody's burden. Especially burdens that we don't really know what they are and how to, we want to help as many people as we can, but if we don't see them and we don't interact with them, and they're just a barista gives us an attitude when we pick up our coffee, and we're going to personalize that all day and feel bad and all that kind of thing. Why did someone cut me off or take my seat? And those things really add up. And there's research real quick just on that says that the way we responded in those negative interactions can have on a day-to-day basis a even worse effect than having a disease or having marital splits. And then you'd say, well, how could that be? Well, it's because the big events happen, but they impact our lives. But the negative interactions that we have with people, if we're having them all the time, it's like one cut after another, and the daily grind that it puts on our heart and our cardiovascular system actually has near an impact. According to research, that as some of the bigger events of our lives, hard to believe, but if you're getting knocked down every day because of negativity that you can't control, boy, it makes it tough to feel happy.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I always think of it as like, in a garden, if you invest in one of those drip systems that just drips the water out to the plants regularly, it's like a cortisol drip in our body. Right. For all those little things that are just consistent drip of cortisol. Can't be healthy, Yeah,
exactly. Good analogy. One little thing real quick, I was just going to share, in terms of positivity. One thing that I'll say this quickly, that it sounds so corny, but it's helped me a lot. I've had a couple of physical challenges I've been dealing with recently. And one of them is when you wake up is just to smile and just literally just smile. And then you all of a sudden you're like, why am I smiling? And then it's things pop in your head as to why you might be smiling. And when I first see a mirror, aside from being scared, there's a comedian who said, I saw myself naked in the mirror and I realized God has a sense of humor. So after I scare myself, I smile, and same thing. It just kicks in something in gear where whatever my tiredness or worry about a meeting upcoming or so forth takes its place in the spirit of just a simple smile. Yeah. It may work, it may not for you, but worth trying for folks listening to, who are listening to our podcast.
Yeah. In Michelle Obama's most recent book, The Light We Carry, she talks about a friend's husband who every morning wakes up and smiles, and he does some greeting like, "Hello, good looking, how are you today?" or something like that. And again, how we talk to ourselves. A lot of what we're talking about is talking to others, but how we talk to ourselves, if that's your first thing, oftentimes people look in the mirror and it's like, "Oh God, it looks like I haven't slept in years. My hair's this, my this is that." And those are our comments to ourselves instead of walking up, looking at the mirror and saying, "Wow, you are awesome. And this is going to be a great day," or whatever. And again, that feels overly positive, but just even a good vibe for ourselves is something to think.
Well, it's funny that you say that. It reminds me of my own story in the book, that there was a lady that at a study group that I was a part of. She was in her late 80s or early 90s, and she was carrying an oxygen tank behind her and walking. And she had this great attitude. And I was writing the book, and I asked her, "How do you be so positive?" Because it was early in the morning when this study group was meeting, and she said, "Well, when I walk by a mirror, the first thing I say is I go, 'Hey, nice to see you.'" And I'm like, "Well, that's nice, That's very nice." So anyway, small thing, right? But really important. And if it's in Michelle Obama's book, that's all the better.
Exactly. It works for him, and clearly she's adapted it. I have a question before we get to the end that I'm just curious about, because you've brought up a few times, being invited into negativity. So now let's assume you've been invited to a negativity party. How do you gracefully reject that invitation?
It's interesting. So what I'm working on a follow-up to the law of the garbage truck now. And when I do seminars on the law of the garbage truck, one of the things I talk about is pivoting. And that, how do you, when someone comes in and they're all ranting about something and they may or may not be important, there are a couple approaches to it. One is just a straight on pivot where you have to acknowledge the person. You can't just move away from them without some sort of acknowledgement, because that people get frustrated with that. So you don't want to be dismissive, but it might be like, "Wow, hey, that sounds like that was really quite a mess, but hey, good to see you now," or whatever the pivot was, or, "Boy, that sounds like that was a tough situation. Is there anything I can do to help?" And then then they intellectually are out of the rant and thinking, No. Are you good, or would it be helpful to focus on this for a minute? "Oh, no, I'm good." So, and I ask the college students that in one of my webinars, one of my seminars at Florida Atlantic University in a program that's run by Professor Robin Rubin, is I'll ask them to come up with 10 pivots that are natural for them. And so we end up having, 40 people in the class, 400 pivots. There's so many different ways of just helping and if you do it with, it's not so much like, "I can't stand what you're talking about," but more of, help this person move into a more productive space, versus just ranting and complaining and back to the excessive negativity we were talking about. So pivoting is one. Another is, and this I write about in the original Law of the Garbage Truck book, is that when someone comes in and they're dumping, and dumping is uninvited negativity that is brought to you with no intention, no focus on your well-being. It's on the person who's dumping is they're just blah, saying. And so I say, venting is better, which is time-based. Can I vent for a minute? Can I just let something out for a moment? And it's permission-based. You ask for permission. Can I just vent for like 5 minutes? So now I listen then and go, "Sure, no problem, go for it." But if a dumping would be more like they come in and they just start ranting about someone, they don't ask what I'm doing, they don't know if I'm getting ready for a meeting or what else is happening, they just start. So one of the quick responses, especially if the company's adopted the law of the garbage truck as a philosophy, is to say, "Hey, do you need to vent for a minute?" And just say, it sounds like you had a tough time. Do you need to vent for a minute? And just that question interrupts the pattern of negativity. And then oftentimes people go, "No, well, Yeah, actually, it'd be great. I love your advice on something, or no, I'm good. I'm just frustrated about this or that or so forth. So those are a couple ways.
Such great examples. And what I hear in both of those examples is it allows people to feel seen and heard,
Yes.
which is so important as humans. And so even if it's just for a minute of being present with someone, allow them to be seen and heard, and then do that pivot. And I feel like, I don't know what the title is of your new book. I can't wait till it comes out. However, I feel like you could do one book on just 400 pivots. What a great book would that be?
Yeah.
All the ways we could pivot.
Well, it's interesting. It's true because there is an elegance to pivoting with kindness and compassion. And because we all get frustrated, we get tired of hearing people, saying the same thing or complaining about the same thing or complaining about things that we don't think should be complained about. Mm-hmm. And so we can really get crazy about it. So there is an elegance to it that can with practice and familiarity make it easier to pivot and help us all move into a more productive, out of the garbage zone into gratitude zone, the more productive, positive energy.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. All right. Are you ready to play 1, 2, 3 with me?
And so it's just like the Price is Right game show. I go, yes. I would love to. I'd love to. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And behind door number 1 is the law of the garbage truck.
Oh, yes.
Number 2, the law of the garbage truck, or door number 3.
Yes. Okay. That's awesome. I like that. That's a great. I don't know. The show would probably be canceled if that was all it was. But,
I think we'd have some people staying tuned. All right, let's go for it. So, what is one mindset shift that you hope the people who have tuned in might take away with them?
The first is that happiness is within our control in 2 ways. One, all the stuff that we learn about in positive psychology about having gratitude, using our strengths, doing what makes a difference. Those are all things that we can control. Obviously, there are inputs and people that we interact with that have an influence on all of that. But the first part is, yes. But the thing to remember is that when negativity comes into your world, especially the needless negativity, the excessive negativity, the stuff that we can't control, that to the degree we can let it pass by, we retain control. We have a defensive response to a defense to respond to negativity that we don't need. So we can actually let that pass by. We don't have to take that in. And the difference between letting it go is you've taken it in, you've been impacted by it, you've been frustrated by it, or upset by it, and then you have to find a mechanism to let it out. So the idea is, if you can let it pass by, get better at identifying predictable negative things that, like drivers and people and sometimes restaurants and so forth, let that pass by. You don't take it in to begin with, so you don't have that negativity. You don't even go there. The easiest place. Well, I'll save that for, I think is in the 3, 2, 1. There's another question. There's an action. But so the mindset is, you do all the offense, have your offense of gratitude and gratitude and strengths-based leadership and so forth. And then have your defense that you can respond to negativity without it controlling your life. And so that space between is yours for the taking. And life can happen. The life positive, it leads to fulfillment because you have more control of through your life. So that's my long answer.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I love looking at it from the offense, the defense, and the space between. Oh, that's fantastic. All right. What are 2 ideas or facts that someone can take away from our time together?
Well, since we're both steeped in positive psychology, let's talk about 2 scientific terms that are useful. One is displaced aggression. Displaced aggression is the idea, simply said, I feel something I experience some negativity over here, excessive, and I'm frustrated by it. And then I go over here to someone else, like my family, after a difficult day at work, or quote unquote a bad day at work. And then I dump my frustration through my interactions on my family. That's displaced aggression, taking from one place and dumping it on somebody else, or other people, with our attitudes, our behaviors, or the like. So to think, you don't want to be a displacing aggressor. That's not that. In fact, one time I was up for executive coaching of a very senior level member, and he told me he had talked to his wife about which coach he should choose, and he had two that he was looking at, and I was one of them. And he said, "Go with the guy go with the guy," because he had read my book. He said, "Go with the guy that is against displaced aggression," and it was really key. It became part of his executive coaching, was taking that and applying it to his home life as well. So displaced aggression. Second one is emotional. Well, actually, for time, I won't dive into that right now. But there's another research piece that is useful. Emotional labor, and well, I can tell it really quickly. Emotional labor. The expectations of a person, like in customer service, that they constantly have to listen, and they don't know the law of the garbage truck, so they take everything personally. They're supposed to be friendly and smiling and so forth on their calls, but they are constantly taking in everything that's negative. They're taking in and personally bringing it into themselves, and that causes emotional labor, where it's harder and harder to keep your cool. And then all of a sudden you let out into a customer call frustration, and then you start dumping garbage because of the 10 calls you had beforehand, versus stopping, taking a breath before that next call, even though it might be automatically coming up, taking a breath, looking in a mirror, putting on a smile, and then saying, "This is a new person. I'm not bringing that emotional labor with me to this new call." So those are two things that are helpful.
Yeah, those are great. One of the things that last one makes me think of is, we talk about metabolizing stress. And if we don't have an outlet, we are going to explode. I remember
Yes.
the example of, if you have a beach ball, I'll use my water glass, in a pool, and you've got your hand here, so you're keeping it underwater. The minute you move your hand, it's not staying there. It pops right out of the water. And that's what happens when we don't give our emotions or ourselves a moment to metabolize that. It's going to eventually pop out of the water, and you don't want it to pop onto your next customer, client, friend, family.
Right, exactly. That's great metaphor. Great, great. Really, I like it. And we don't want it. And those balls, even though they're soft, they can come out pretty hard when they come popping out of the water. They come out and hit you.
Exactly.
Like misplaced airbag.
Exactly. And you might be in the firing lane as well as everybody else. So,
Right.
All right. What 3 actions I always like, and I think this is the nature of us as coaches, you want people to plug and play things. What can people do? They, turn off this webinar. What can they do immediately to take some of what you're talking about and put it into play?
I think there are so many different things that I'd love to share, but I think the first is really around doing 3 things. One is start looking at what garbage are you accepting, and what garbage are you allowing to dump on you. And so there's a pledge around that. They've had people from 100 countries take this pledge. It's in the book. That is, you don't want to accept garbage. You don't want to allow negative stuff that you don't need in your life. So start to identify, when do you get frustrated? Do you still get frustrated by bad drivers? Man, they're always out there, and you're one of them at times. Every one of us has made a bad move driving. So do we want someone coming after us? So look at the things in life that trigger you negatively, and see if it's garbage that you don't need to handle, that you can let pass by, or you can counteract with a smile or wave like the taxi driver. So that's the first thing. Second thing is look at when your moods change, and especially before you get out of the house for work, or online before work starts, and see what garbage are you creating? What are you thinking? Talking to yourself. I have a part in the book, The 3 Promises, about people have self-talk, and some people say no. Well, I say, well, I'm going to ask you right now to stand up, and I want you to tell me what 5 things you're going to do. And they're thinking, no, I'm not going to do that. Because who's this guy to tell me to stand up and do it? I said, well, that's self-talk. You're talking to yourself, So so identify the stuff that you're saying to yourself. What's the garbage and what's the real stuff? Because we shouldn't be saying certain things to ourselves. We don't deserve it. And then thirdly is, when am I dumping? When am I the one who's driving the garbage truck? When am I the one who's actually bringing excessive negativity to a family event or an activity or a direct report or a customer, and start to identify that. And when you start to see these, and you start to see garbage trucks or see your own behavior, amazing things start to happen. I mean, it's life-changing. If you've not been exposed to it and you gain the insights for the first time, boy, it is life-changing and has an immediate impact on your happiness and fulfillment. Immediate. So those are the 3 things I'd say to do.
What I love is that common thread between those 3 things. It's hold up a mirror and look at, what am I doing to contribute to all these situations and scenarios? What am I putting out there? Oftentimes we're focused on the other people and how they impact us. And so I love that kind of doing a self-check of what's happening with me and what I'm putting out. Well
said. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Our final takeaway for today: what is possible? And you have won the game. I will be sending you the law of the garbage truck.
Awesome. I like the author to sign it.
Exactly. What is possible when someone learns how to effectively manage negativity?
Well, I have a formula, a happiness formula, where I say it's H equals CF, which is create fulfillment, and a plus N, which is navigate negativity, and that equals happiness. So you can do all the right things around, again, gratitude, meditation, and so forth. But if you don't have a way of navigating negativity in the world, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled, because you're dragged down by, again, the bad behavior of other people and the bad thoughts you create in your own mind, or the behavior that you allow yourself to engage in, which is not positive, not productive. And so that's the third possibility there. So your happiness is possible and your fulfillment is possible when you can navigate the negativity, so that you're not overtaken by others and other people's agendas, or just their unknowing behavior, the impact that it's having, that you are taking your focus off your own goals and commitment to the organization you're a part of, or the family that you are a part of as well.
Yeah. As you were just saying that, it just made me think, it's like, don't ride shotgun with the garbage truck driver.
Yeah. True. Yeah, good one. Yeah. Exactly.
Gosh, David, it is always, always a pleasure. I can't wait for the new book to come out so that we can have a rich conversation on what's next with how to manage people and manage ourselves around negativity and ultimately living fuller, happier, more loving lives.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of saying it. Thank you. And I will be more than pleased to come back to the podcast where things are possible. So thank you. Thank you, Eileen. Great to see you.
Great seeing you. And thank you again.